Hello, this is Nick from Breaker Press Games, and in this episode of DCC Basics, we're going to talk about other combat rules, Part 2. Alright, so this is the second part in a series where I am breaking down the rules on page 96 of the DCC rulebook. It's just headed as other combat rules, and there is a bunch of really useful and interesting information on that page. So in the first episode, which I will link over here, I talked about ability score loss, catching fire, charge, and dropping a torch. All really interesting stuff. This episode, we're going to talk about falling, firing into melee, recovering armor, and recovering fired missile weapons. So, before we get into the thick of it, if you find this video interesting, entertaining, or otherwise useful, please like, subscribe, comment down below. You know the drill. Additionally, you can become a member of the Breaker Press Patreon. At $6 and above a month, you get something in the mail every single month. The last two have been these class guides, the Bruiser 2.0, which is shipping right now, and the Canine 2.0. I am finishing up the Goat mini class guide that is it's available on Patreon now in a work in progress format, but it just went through its first editing pass with Reverend Dak, and will be available soon. Additionally, I have a crowdfund running right now. If you go to Kickstarter, you can find something called Horrors of the Whispering Woods. This is a box set that contains two zines. One is a Hexcrawl toolkit called To a Guide to the Whispering Wood, and the other is called Lurking Horrors, which is a bestiary of monsters tied to the Whispering Wood. And as part of that crowdfund, I'm also trying to fund a collector's box. Standard collection that will be to collect all of your zines, because as somebody posted their collection online today, there are 1 million of them, 30 plus. So it is a convenient way to carry all of your standard stuff or store it on a shelf. So yeah, if you can support. If you can't, you can't. I totally understand. Let's get into talking about other combat rules part 2. So first and foremost, we're going to talk about falling. Now, falling rules are generally fairly consistent across systems, at least from what I've seen. Falling causes 1d6 damage per 10 feet fallen, but here's where Dungeon Crawl Classics likes to weird it up. So for every damage die that comes up as a 6, the victim also breaks a bone. For each broken bone, the PC permanently loses 1 point of strength or agility. Player's choice, player gets to choose, because it never heals quite right. Now, you will notice that in the Cleric's Lay on Hand rules, which is a future video, we'll cover that in a future video because we haven't done that yet. But with their Lay on Hands rule, it is possible to heal broken bones, but even so, the way that the wording suggests is that they still have the point loss, the ability score loss from the broken bone. Of course, that is up to DM's fiat, judge's fiat, but that is the way I read it, the way I interpret it. So yeah, falling. D6 damage for every 10 feet fallen, plus every one that comes up as a 6, victim breaks a bone. So, interesting stuff. Next, we are going to talk about firing into melee. And this is one of the ones that is super exciting to me. Do I have a copy right here? I was hoping I had a copy of my Missileer class, because I was able to leverage this ability into something interesting in my games. So firing into melee, a PC that uses a missile weapon against an opponent engaged in melee may hit an ally. If the attack misses, there is a 50% chance it hits an ally engaged in melee. Determine that ally randomly if there's multiple, and then reroll the attack against the new target's armor class. So This makes firing into melee extremely risky in Dungeon Crawl Classics, and that is something that I love. I know I, as a judge, tend to, lean across the table, and when somebody's considered, I'm like, do it. Because it makes for an exciting game, because the way things pan out, oftentimes the friendly PC ends up getting killed or seriously wounded by friendly fire. Always a good time. That's just the type of table I like to run. Speaking of which, I am a big fan of Grimdark play, and both of these next two rules are rules that kind of lean into that, in my opinion. First one is recovering armor. So armor reclaimed from the dead is dented, pierced, and compromised. Armor recovered from a friend or foe has a 25% chance of being useless. So only 25% chance, a 1 in 4 chance. In fact, that's the way I would do it. I roll a d4, and if it comes up a 1, then the armor is useless. And it can be repaired by an armorer. But it can be repaired by an armorer at half the cost to a quarter of a cost. It literally says that in the rule book. It doesn't give you a specific. It gives you a range. Once again, judge's fiat. All right. So also in part of that, this isn't something that comes up in my games because I don't run demi-humans in Stennard, but demi-humans can't wear human-sized armor, and 75% of armor found is human-sized. So keep that in mind. The intent in DCC, in order to this is one of those sort of balancing principles, is just because you find magical armor doesn't mean that you're going to get to wear it. In fact, just finding armor in general doesn't mean that you're going to get to wear it or that it's useful. So keep these rules in mind. And then finally, recovering missile fire weapons. PCs can recover weapons that miss their target, but there is a 50% chance that recovered arrows, slingstones, javelins, etc. are destroyed. So yeah, I make my PCs in my games track all of their ammunition. I know a lot of GMs don't, but I run Grimdark Survival Horror, and so that's very important. And the first thing people do is they're like, "Oh, I'm just gonna go recover my arrow." Well, it's broken. Or I should say, roll a d6. Oh, you rolled a 1 to 3. It's broken. So 50% chance that it's broken. And so those are the batch of other combat rules I wanted to cover in this video. I skipped over grappling because I've been doing these in alphabetical order, but or the way they're listed on the sheet on the page. But I skipped over grappling because grappling, unarmed combat, and subdual damage I feel all kind of grouped together, and so those will be in the next video. Now, one of the things that I wanted to add to this before I go is that as a GM or judge, I like to leverage these rules, these sorts of rules in my games and in the stuff that I create. Falling damage is definitely something that in Tragedy at Woodwitch Rise, one of my adventures, there is multiple opportunities where you could end up falling. So that is one that that is going to get used. Additionally, in my last video, there's a dog. In the last video, I talked about the charge rule, and in the new goat class, I was like, oh, I'm gonna that'd be a cool thing to include as a modified version for the goat. So keep this stuff in mind when you're reading about these rules. Think about them, or hearing me talk about them. Think about how would that come up in your games and how you play at your table. So I think that covers what I wanted to talk about. I was going to say, leveraging it. So the firing into melee rule, I created a class called the Missileer. And the Missileer has something called the True Aim die. And as the Missileer goes up in level, it goes from 50% chance of hitting an ally to 33% chance to 25% chance, and it continues to go down as you level up. And so, I saw this rule, and I was like, one of the things that people causes them to not fire missile weapons in DCC is that risk of friendly fire. And so I created a class that I built one of its special rules around this particular rule in order to encourage someone who really likes to use missile weapons like longbows or javelins or whatever, to encourage them to do so. So I think that covers it. Thank you for supporting indie games and indie game designers. Until next time, we will be talking about Other Combat Rules Part 3, the final Other Combat Rules in the series. DD is constantly on the move in this particular video. So, all that being said, thank you for supporting, and I will talk to you all soon.